Good evening, I am Tori Pengilly and welcome to tonight's episode of A Current Affair. Today's segment is reflecting back on the Qantas dispute of 2011, one of Australia's most influential and prominent industrial relations dispute in history. In late 2010, Qantas employees, including pilots, engineers and ground staff, through their respective unions, had been trying to renegotiate their enterprise bargaining agreements with Qantas. The unions involved were the Transport Workers Union of Australia, the Australian and International Pilots Union, and the Australian Licensed Aircraft Engineers Association. They were engaged by the employees to address a multitude of issues including levels of pay, aspects of outsourcing, and job security. Job security was of particular importance as Qantas wanted offshore jobs and expand the airline to Asia, which would result in up to 1,000 job losses. After many negotiations between Qantas employee representatives and their respective unions broke down, each union then balloted their member. Following this, the workforce deployed mild industrial sanctions on the job, which are ways of limiting work. Fair Work Australia authorised this particular industrial action, commencing it on the 22nd of July. These were lawful forms of protected industrial action, which included strikes of up to 48 hours, stop work meetings, work to rule, overtime bans, bans on hire duties, and refusal to feed data into software. On the 16th of August 2011, Qantas announced plans to launch a new airline in Asia, which would result in 1,000 job losses. Qantas had a plan to increase market share, making it a more competitive airline internationally. The three unions responded to this announcement, proposing that 3,800 of its members would stop work for 4 hours, whilst workers who continued to work during this action were allegedly threatened by unions and their representatives. Additionally, the action was taken further when two right-handed engineers were reportedly about to start working for a week using only their left hand, and pilots were making unauthorized announcements informing passengers about their union campaign. In retaliation to these events, further industrial action was taken on the 29th of October 2011. Qantas CEO Alan Joyce announced the immediate and unprecedented grounding of all Australian domestic and international Qantas flights effective 5 p.m, with a proposed lockout of the airline staff beginning at 8 p.m. without pay. This tactic threatened to damage Qantas's reputation. It disrupted many of its customers and its workforce, but Alan Joyce maintained that he had no alternative. The aim of Qantas management implementing the lockout was to trigger government intervention in order to solve the dispute quickly so that financial losses would be limited. Following the abrupt announcement of the suspension of operations, the Qantas aircrafts on ground remained grounded, and all passengers who had boarded the aircraft were instructed to disembark and collect their baggage. Flights that were in the air continued to their destination and were grounded once they landed. The lockout affected 68,000 to 80,000 passengers in the first day, as a result of the cancellation of 600 flights, costing the airline in excess $20 million for each subsequent day the fleet was grounded. The dramatic decision by Qantas caught the federal government's attention, with Julia Gillard, the Prime Minister then, requesting an urgent meeting at Fair Work Australia. Due to the dramatic escalation of the dispute, the government made an application to Fair Work Australia to have the industrial action terminated and have Fair Work Australia resolve the dispute. On the 31st of October 2011, Fair Work Australia terminated all industrial action taken by Qantas and the involved trade unions. The order was requested by the federal government amid fears that prolonged work stoppage would have significant consequences to the national economy, especially with regards to the tourism and mining sectors. This resulted in Fair Work Australia stepping in to act as a mediator. Fair Work Australia gave the parties 21 days to resolve the dispute. The dispute was not resolved within this requested timeframe, however some progress was made on the 19th of December 2011, where Qantas and the Australian Licensed Aircraft Engineers Association agreed to a 3% wage increase and a guarantee of job security for existing engineers, with some offshore maintenance of A380 aircrafts. Regardless of this progress, on the 22nd of March 2012, Fair Work Australia commenced arbitration hearings due to a number of outstanding differences between Qantas and the Transport Workers Union. Throughout the events, there were a number of concerns and issues that developed as the dispute escalated. These issues included effects to the tourism industry, the reputation of Qantas, and bullying in the workplace. Tourism industry leaders stated that Qantas cancellations were a devastating development that threatened to ruin Australia's credibility as a tourist destination. Grounding the entire fleet stranded tens of thousands of Qantas passengers around the world. As a result, 600 flights were cancelled worldwide, with 68,000 passengers affected. This statement was proved to be correct when Qantas's rival airlines responded positively to the fleet grounding, offering stranded passengers discounts on flights, costing Qantas $194 million Australian dollars, which would ultimately have a substantial financial loss. On the 31st of October, the industrial action, which was originally approved by Fair Work Australia, was terminated according to Section 424 in the Fair Work Act 2009, which permits Fair Work Australia to suspend or terminate industrial action if it is to cause significant damage to the Australian economy. They followed correct procedures to resolve the dispute and ensure the flight grounding is disconnected. The move by Qantas CEO to ground the Qantas fleet around the world did cause significant damage to the brand, regardless of the motives for this industrial action. This action had the potential to erode trust in Qantas among its key audiences, including travellers, its shareholders, and the government. For the public, there is no doubt that Qantas initiated the lockout at a time when large numbers of passengers were trying to travel to different locations in Australia and around the world. The announcement also came as a surprise to everyone but the Qantas board, which opened up the company to speculation that it was planned for some time, which will not assist the future for Qantas. Additionally, when they surprised the government and embarrassed them while hosting a major international event where most of the travellers were flying with Qantas, they would have lost the support of another key stakeholder, the government. Through this action, Qantas forced many of its loyal customers to trial other airlines. Some customers may return, but Qantas's market share in the medium term was damaged, with the flow-on effect of customers choosing to fly with somewhere else, due to the newfound uncertainty they might get when flying with Qantas. Finally, workplace bullying, which is a major issue and is considered illegal when it violates federal or state laws which prohibits discrimination and harassment in the workplace. These laws protect employees from harassment based on race, colour, nationality, religion, sex, union involvement, age, or disability. Complaints from the company's CEO were made with claims of death threats in the mail. There were allegations that the cars of some workers who refused to join the recent strike action were vandalised. However, the New South Wales Police, without explanation, dropped the investigation. Whilst the union believed it was a PR stunt to obtain public support during the dispute, the police deemed that the letters did not constitute a death threat, stating that the matter would go no further. When an industrial dispute occurs, parties bargain with each other, and if they can't reach an agreement, industrial action can often result. They use economic force against one another to beat the other into submission, and either one party gives up, reaching an agreement on the other party's terms, they strike a compromise, or the dispute continues. However, under Australian legislation, there are mechanisms for dealing with disputes that threaten public health and safety or threaten the economy as a whole. Qantas, as the national airline, was important to the economy of Australia, so a prolonged work stoppage at Qantas had significant economic consequences due to its substantial share of domestic air travel and the impact it has on tourism particularly. Because of this, there was a significant threat to the economy after the grounding of Qantas planes that Fair Work Australia had no option but to put an end to the industrial action, sending the dispute into arbitration. In addition to Fair Work's legal actions in ending the dispute, the lawfulness of the parties' actions needed to be examined. Although the actions of Qantas to ground its fleet was lawful, the customers left stranded around the world were able to seek legal recompense provided their money was not returned. At the time, Qantas was the most popular airline. Upon grounding the fleet, customers missed out on holidays, wasting their work leave. Others may have had to cancel important business meetings or big events that cannot be replaced, such as weddings, were missed. Another contributing factor was that at a time many people didn't invest in travel insurance. As a result, when the airline grounded the fleet without warning, customers would not have been covered and would have had to find a solution of their own expense. All of these factors are reasons many customers were unsatisfied and sought legal action. Although the three unions involved in the dispute took lawful actions in seeking approval from Fair Work Australia to take protected industrial action, these actions included strikes of up to 48 hours, stop work meetings, work to rule, overtime bans, bans on hire duties, and refusal to feed data into software. However, some pilots instigated their own industrial action, which involved making announcements regarding pay and job security over the intercom system of flights whilst wearing red ties as a symbol of defiance. This was not a part of their work code of conduct or agreements potentially subjecting these employees to dismissal. However, technically it was not unlawful. Furthermore, the disputes appeared to present signs of bullying and threatening behaviour, which was investigated by federal police. The company's CEO, Alan Joyce, claims he and other executives received death threats in the mail. There are also allegations that the cars of some workers who refused to join the recent strike action had been vandalised. The investigation was later dropped. There was no explanation as to why, but the unions questioned whether it was just a PR stunt by the airline to win public support. The industrial dispute not only affected external parties but also Qantas as an airline and its employees. For Qantas, the action reduced customer satisfaction levels, resulted in a loss of reputation, and a staggering $194 million of revenue was lost. The figure includes $27 million lost from forward bookings, $29 million in customer recovery initiatives, and $70 million from impact of global fleet grounding. This was on top of the $68 million lost prior to the grounding from flight cancellations and delays. This was a major financial setback for Qantas, which also had a 3% drop in satisfaction rates to 84%. Although no one lost their jobs during the dispute, nor did any positions get made redundant, engineers and other workers still face possible job losses in the future due to the continued expansion of Qantas overseas. However, rival airlines seized the opportunity to improve their satisfaction ratings by adopting Qantas passengers, resulting in Virgin Australia in particular gaining 2% satisfaction, and both Jetstar and Tiger Airways showing improved levels of customer satisfaction. As a result, it could be argued that Qantas management and its board made a big strategic mistake is that Virgin began to take market share from Qantas, particularly with travellers who required a stable and reliable service. If Virgin provided a level of service equal to Qantas, then it would be difficult for Qantas to get back all of its customers, especially in a short period. It is believed that the actions taken by Qantas were to get the company what they originally wanted, a reduced Australian workforce willing to accept lower wages and the capacity to put much of the international component of the business in Asia. After Fair Work Australia terminated all industrial action, parties were directed to bargain for 21 days but failed to reach agreements, which led to Fair Work Australia having to arbitrate a new enterprise bargaining agreement. Prior to the arbitration hearings, Qantas announced the restructure of its operations, which would have resulted in an initial 500 positions being lost. But after the arbitration hearings, the security of these jobs was assured in addition to wage increase. In Qantas's favour, they were free to run the business and not be dictated by union officials. Whilst this may be damaging to the concerns of employees, ultimately both parties had different but significant outcomes. Throughout the industrial dispute, all parties undertook lawful actions, and therefore none of the events set precedents for new or future industrial relations laws. However, as a result of the significant measures Qantas took to lock out and ground employees, the Australian economy suffered. Therefore, legislation regarding the capability of organisations to implement such drastic measures should be considered, as well as earlier intervention by Fair Work Australia or the federal government. Additionally, a change in the industrial relations law so that there isn't uncertainty for employees under any circumstances, especially if the organisation is expanding overseas. It is recommended that a change in industrial relations laws, making them universal so that there isn't uncertainty for employees regardless of the industry. Additionally, workers and unions need to be able to work, organise and bargain at an international level, organising new standards and structures so that workers can receive equal pay for the same work and have the same conditions regardless of whether it is domestic or international work. Furthermore, a bill was introduced in federal parliament restricting access to employer lockouts, especially in response to industrial action. This would prevent companies like Qantas grounding the fleet and locking out employees, which ultimately cost the company and Australian economy a large sum of money, affecting the Qantas brand and Australian tourism industry. I am Tori Pengilly, and you've just experienced the highs and lows of what was the 2011 Qantas dispute. Good night.